Assalamualaikum dan selamat pagi semua. Terima kasih kepada puan-puan yang sudi bersama kami untuk Bengkel Live Genius Kunyah dengan topik yang menarik pada hari ini iaitu Rethinking Autism. Terdapat pelbagai persoalan dan mitos yang mungkin bermain di minda kita mengenai autism. Topik kali ini mengajak kita meneroka perspektif yang berbeza mengenai individu autism. Semoga perkongsian ini dapat membantu kita menjadi komuniti yang lebih prihatin terhadap individu autism. Jadi pada hari ini kami bawakan pegawai intervensi yang berpengalaman luas iaitu Puan Yong Ennie untuk menjelaskan persoalan-persoalan anda. Untuk makluman semua, kehadiran Bengkel pada pagi ini akan disertakan bersama dengan e-sijil. Link kehadiran akan diberikan di penghujung sesi nanti. Sebelum kita teruskan sesi kita pada pagi ini, sedikit latar belakang mengenai Puan Yong Ennie. Beliau mempunyai lulusan sarjana muda dalam sains pertuturan di UKM dan pada tahun 2018, beliau telah menerima beasiswa Chevening dan melanjutkan pengajian sarjana sains dalam autism di UK. Beliau pernah berkhidmat di pelbagai hospital kerajaan daripada tahun 2007 sehingga 2014 dan berkhidmat di Genius Kunyah sehingga kini. Tanpa melengahkan masa, saya serahkan sesi ini kepada Puan Yong Ennie. Dipersilakan.
Terima kasih Cik Aisyah. Thank you very much everyone for being with us this morning. Okay, nama saya Yong Ennie dan saya akan berkongsi dengan anda mengenai topik hari ini iaitu Rethinking Autism. Okay, sebelum itu biarkan allow me to share my screen dulu. Okay, so sebelum saya mula, saya ingin berkongsi mengenai background of this particular picture of the slide ya. Okay, masa saya buat masters in autism, I had group work dengan coursemate saya lah, dan one of my coursemate is actually has autism. And when we were doing the presentation, he is the one who decided on the page, okay, this page, and this is what he put, these three different pictures here, okay. So I feel that this is a message that dia nak hantar kepada kami, iaitu autism, a different ability, not a disability, a difference, not a disorder, autism, different, not less. So today, I am inspired by the interaction yang saya pernah ada dengan kawan-kawan saya yang ada autism, and also people that I have worked with to bring you the topic today untuk nak berkongsi mengenai adakah kita mempunyai perspektif yang berbeza mengenai autism. Okay, so kalau kita tengokkan autism dia macam ada banyak gelaran sikit. You can actually call them autism, autistic, or autism spectrum disorder or ASD. Okay, so why so many different kind of names to call them? It's actually depending on what kind of perspective you come from. Sama ada you believe that they should be called person first. So the person should come first. So they should be called a child with autism, a child with ASD, or individual with autism, individual with ASD, atau identity first. Okay, so an autistic person. So whether you come to believe that the person should be a person first or identity first might influence the way where we use the word autism or autistic. Okay, according to DSM-5 Diagnostic Statistical Manual, autism ialah neurodevelopmental disorder that affects two areas. Yang pertama ialah social communication and social interaction. Yang kedua ialah restricted repetitive patterns of behavior, interests or activities. Okay, I'm going to explain a little bit about this for a short while. Okay, we'll start off with social communication and interaction. Okay, dalam social communication dan interaction ada tiga areas yang kita akan tengok. The first one is social emotion, reciprocity, non-verbal communication, dan juga hubungan, relationship. Okay, so these three make up of the social communication and interaction. And in the DSM-5, diagnosis, for a person to be diagnosed with autism, dia kena memenuhi ciri-ciri dalam ketiga-tiga bahagian ini. Okay, in social emotion reciprocity, you may see that that person kurang sharing of interest. That means dia kurang berkongsi minat dia. Kemungkinan apa yang dia nampak menarik dan sebagainya, dia kurang berkongsi. Okay, in children very obviously they don't show something that interests them other than mungkin mereka meminta in the early stage. Sharing of emotions, kurang berkongsi perasaan dia, okay, terhadap orang lain, dengan orang lain. Initiate or response to social interaction, kemungkinan kesukaran untuk memulakan atau memberi respon apabila kita cuba berinteraksi dengan dia. Okay, may have awkward social approach, kemungkinan cara dia nak memulakan interaksi itu kelihatan pelik sedikit atau suka untuk nak mengambil bahagian dalam berbualan, having difficulties with back and forth conversations. The second part is understanding and using non-verbal communication. Okay, let me show you this. Okay, kalau kita tengokkan this person, what is this person trying to say? Okay, so most of you would probably tell me that this person says stop. So how do you know this person says stop? Okay, kemungkinan kita dapat integrate bahawa dia punya tangan tu nampak stern dan dia berpakaian seperti seorang polis. So most likely dia akan cakap stop. I have shown this picture before dengan seorang kanak-kanak autism yang pernah saya work with, and he told me that is high five. Okay, so this is because one of the things is that bila kita angkat tangan, for them what is familiar to them is actually high five. They may not know how to integrate the facial expression of the person with the sternness of the hand dengan pakaian dia to understand that it's actually not high five, but instead ia adalah stop. Okay, then they may have, a lot of them may have lacking of eye contact. Okay, kemungkinan tidak kurang pandang atau tidak pandang bila kita bercakap dengan mereka. But it may not be persistent, as they learn to have, as they learn that communication requires eye contact, eventually most of them will learn how to use eye contact. Okay, and also how to integrate or understand facial expression, memahami perasaan. A lot of times they may know the basic, for example, happy or sad or angry, especially angry sebab angry lah, mak ayah tu selalu tunjuk kepada anak-anak kan. So then angry is one of the first emotion that they recognize. But mungkin other emotions, mungkin suka sikit untuk mereka nak faham, surprise, curious, dan sebagainya. So then in order for us to untuk nak berkomunikasi, we need to integrate the non-verbal communication bersama-sama dengan komunikasi. Sebab kalau tidak, there's kemungkinan information tu tak tersampai. Contohnya, kalau saya buat macam ni, and I say, I feel so hot. I feel so hot. So which one would you believe me? That when I say hot, or tubuh badan saya yang menunjukkan saya merasa panas ke? Okay, so then this is where your integration and your of the cues around you helps you to understand what is going on around you. So the third one is developing, understanding, and maintaining relationship. Okay, so kemungkinan seseorang tu ada kesukaran untuk nak menyesuaikan kelakuan dia dalam social context yang berlainan. Say for example, kat kenduri kahwin, how should we adjust ourselves? Kat library, okay, how should we know that we cannot shout, we cannot run around or play in the library. Kat cinema pula macam mana? So we need to know how to adjust our behavior according to the different social contexts. Second is kemungkinan mereka akan ada sekarang untuk nak berkawan, okay, unable to maybe develop friendship or have difficulties with maintaining the friendship. Okay, and also another area, sharing imaginative play, bermain olok-olok bersama kawan adalah sesuatu yang juga suka. They can play, sometimes a lot of times it's not that they cannot play imaginative, tetapi kemungkinan nak berkawan secara olok-olok dengan kawan lain adalah sesuatu yang susah. Okay, and some of them may appear to have absence in interest in peers. Macam kurang berminat dengan orang lain, duduk jauh dengan orang lain, tidak memberi perhatian kepada kawan-kawan rakan sebaya mereka. Okay, so these are the three areas. Dari segi the next area, okay, ramai orang bila dia fikir pasal behavior, kemungkinan akan rasa, oh, behavior that means that orang yang kanak-kanak yang ada autism tu tantrum, meltdown, challenging behavior. So this is the first thing that maybe is associated or come to mind when we think about behavior. But I would like you to know that it's actually more towards restricted, repetitive patterns. Dia adalah terhad, berulang dan merupakan satu corak. Okay? And it's a behavior, tingkah laku, interest, minat dan juga activity. So restricted, repetitive patterns of behavior, interest or activities. So it's all this, okay? It's not about challenging behavior and kind of things. That is, all behaviors are communicative, okay? So let's look into this. So they could, in this area, in this area of restricted repetitive patterns, behavior, interests, or activities, kanak-kanak, bila mereka nak diagnose, they only need to fulfill 2 out of the 4 areas. So one of the areas is stereotype or repetitive. They could have stereotype motor movement, okay, seperti bermain dengan jari atau hand flapping, those that we commonly see. Atau object, okay, menyusun object, do certain things repetitive with a certain object, spinning the object, okay, atau pertuturan. So this will, what is commonly that we see is the repetition of words like echolalia. Okay, insistence or inflexibility is the second one. So they may have difficulties with changes, kesukaran untuk menerima perubahan. Okay, thrives on routines, memerlukan rutin. Okay, and also they may have insistence or inflexibility in towards speech. Okay, so mungkin dia perlu bercakap dengan cara yang sama atau dengan mengikut urutan tertentu. For example, I once worked with a child who always insists that dia punya ibu kena sebut dulu. You know, what do you want? What do you want? So she will keep repeating until the mother say, what do you want? So when the mother say, what do you want? Then she say, I want chocolate. So then she thinks that if she needs to ask something, somebody has to ask, what do you want first? And she will insist that will go as the step 1, what do you want? Then step 2, I want something. Okay, interest pula, there are a few things that we look at. You will know that some of them have restricted interest. Terhad kepada sesuatu. Kemudian sangat suka terhad kepada dinosaur, terhad kepada alphabets atau terhad kepada kenderaan sebagai contoh. Okay, very fixated towards this. Okay, and in a high intensity, pada kadar yang tinggi, really, sentiasa bermain dengan benda yang sama atau minat yang lebih kurang sama, and highly focused when they are engaging in their interests. Okay, dari bahagian sensory pula, they can be either hyporeactive, kurang menunjukkan atau kurang menunjukkan tindak balas terhadap rangsangan, so they require a lot of stimulation to react. Or they may have hyperreactive towards sensory. Very commonly seen is that they react adversely towards very, very loud sounds or certain lights and so on. Okay, atau some of them could have unusual interest in sensory. They seek certain things, like possibly they like to look at movements, they like to look at shiny things or certain things that bright stuff and stuff like that. Okay, so these are some of the things in sensory. Okay, now I want to discuss. We know that autism is a spectrum. It's also called autism spectrum disorder. Okay, so according to DSM-5, there are 3 levels of support. Okay, level 1 is what can be most frequently associated with high functioning autism. Okay, so individu yang berada kat level 1, okay, they may require support, okay, some support, okay, kemungkinan kesukaran dia lebih banyak kepada susah untuk memulakan interaksi sosial, okay, mungkin ada inflexibility of behavior, kemungkinan sukar untuk nak menukar aktiviti, and some difficulties with pengurusan, organization planning, okay. Kalau kat level 2 pula autism, so they require more substantial support, memerlukan sokongan yang lebih, okay, dan dia punya kesukaran dalam social interaksi adalah lebih ketara, okay, juga kurang fleksibel dalam tingkah laku dia, dan juga mempunyai kesukaran atau distress coping with change, untuk deal with pertukaran tu, perubahan tu kemungkinan akan lebih sukar lagi dan akan mungkin nampak lebih banyak repetitive behaviors. Untuk yang level 3 pula is what is mostly associated with severe autism. So they may require substantial support, okay, sangat memerlukan sokongan, okay, kesukaran dalam social interaksi dan komunikasi yang amat ketara, okay, dan juga sangat susah untuk nak cope with perubahan, okay, dan juga banyak kemungkinan individu ni akan mempunyai lebih banyak repetitive behaviors, tingkah laku yang berulang yang mungkin akan mengganggu fungsi kehidupan harian. Okay, now autism kebanyakan masanya doesn't appear alone. A lot of times it may appear with other kind of diagnosis. According to a study done, okay, 85% of autistic individuals have more than one comorbidities. Okay, comorbidities adalah diagnosis yang lain. Okay, only 15% has only autism. Okay, that means 50% of this dia punya diagnosis hanya autism dan tak ada diagnosis lain. But a lot of times they have other things, and the most common comorbidities is language disorder, okay, kecelaruan dalam bahasa, intellectual disability, masalah pembelajaran, okay, and also seizures. So then autism itself is actually mostly social interaction, social communication with the restricted repetitive patterns of behaviors and stuff like that. But it doesn't mean that they have difficulties in learning. Okay, but if they come with difficulties in learning, it's most likely attributed to intellectual disability. So what is the male to female ratio in autism diagnosis? Okay, so what I learned before this and last time is that male to female ratio is biasanya 4 lelaki kepada seorang perempuan dalam diagnosis autism. Okay, according to studies done in 2017, it's actually closer to 3 males to 1 female. Okay, tetapi there appears to be a diagnostic gender bias. Okay, sebab ramai perempuan who meet the criteria for autism are at disproportionate risk of not receiving a clinical diagnosis. Okay, so so the latest trends of study is on females and autism, and they think that, and they are beginning to see that a lot of females are left out of the diagnosis. Why? Okay, it could possibly be because of this. There's a female presentation in autism traits and also camouflaging and masking. So apa tu ialah masking? Autistic masking is an intuitive survival mechanism that allows autistic people to cope in non-autistic world. So dia macam hiding, like trying to blend in. Like a chameleon, dia akan blend in with the surroundings so that it's not obvious for people to see what its actual true colors is. Okay, so dalam female presentation, this is an example that I took. Okay, so I will just highlight a few. For example, dia mungkin akan kurang, okay, less prone to act out physically or aggressively. So nampak kurang. Okay, atau dia punya intense focus tu adalah dalam subjek tertentu seperti animals or classic literature yang di mana nampak seperti nampak biasa. So kita pun nampak macam minat yang kita panggil sebagai normal. Okay, so then dia tak ketara. Atau stimming behavior such as hand flapping, rocking or spinning kelihatan sangat kurang. Okay, so dan kebanyakan masanya mereka lebih banyak internalize, simpan ke dalam, simpan mereka punya fikiran atau kesukaran mereka daripada externalize, macam menunjukkan keluar, obvious to us. Okay, and often they are more socially aware and driven. Lebih cenderung untuk ingin nak berkawan, untuk nak bersosial. Okay, and they may have also be aware of the need of social interaction. Mereka tahu mereka perlu berinteraksi. Okay, and more able to follow social actions through observation. So boleh perhatikan dan akan cuba mengikut apa yang orang lain buat. Okay, and may play appropriately with toys and engage in pretend play, or may focus on organizing toys or objects. So they still can engage in a lot of these kind of things. So it may not be so obvious. Okay, now another thing that they may do is that they do observe human behavior and learning to mask difficulty. So mereka akan memerhati and they try their best not to show untuk nak menunjuk yang saya tak faham, saya akan kesukaran. Okay, and may make greater efforts to avoid drawing attention to themselves. Okay, so tak nak menarik minat kepada apa yang mereka kesukaran mereka, and usually holds it together well while out and explodes at home. Okay, so I have listened to a narrative from one woman with autism, and she got her diagnosis late, and what she said was that she was having difficulties kat tempat kerja dia, and she couldn't cope with the hours, couldn't cope with work dan sebagainya. Tapi kat tempat kerja tu dia just hide like simpan perasaan dia dan sebagainya, and when she went home she trashed everything in her house, dia baling barang dan sebagainya. So usually they would try to keep it together, and when they are home they could explode, and this is what we call camouflaging and also masking. So if you look at autism, what do we see here? Okay, if you look at this person's face, do you see the side wheel or do you see the front wheel? Then because I said dia kemungkinan anda akan nampak, ada side wheel dan juga ada front wheel. Okay, so that a lot of things that I have discussed just now, we need to think about like whose perspective those autism characteristics is, atau whose perspective siapa, dalam bila kita memikirkan pasal autisme. There's always two sides of a story, there's always two sides of a coin. So perkataan yang digunakan untuk describe autism in DSM and also in ICD, International Classification of Diseases, is usually these words: deficits, failure, difficulties, deviant, impaired, abnormal, okay, absence, weak, lack of. So itu adalah kekurangan, kesukaran, kecelaruan, abnormal, lemah, dan kekurang upayaan. Now, however, Olga Bodashina is a prolific writer in books regarding autism. What she thinks autism is that it is a qualitative different ways to interact, communicate, and process information which do not coincide with conventional ones. Okay, dia adalah cara yang berbeza. Okay, cara yang berbeza di mana dalam interaksi, komunikasi dan cara proses information. Okay, dan mungkin tak berlainan dengan cara yang mana orang biasanya guna. Okay, so let's go back to the spectrum of disorder. Does it happen in a linear fashion? Adakah dia macam fall neatly into category? Dia memang level 1 macam ini, level 2 macam ni, level 3 macam ni. Okay. Now, in according to a report by the Government of Accountability Office, where the youth, orang muda, dia buat round table talks on transitions to adulthood. So what they did is that they put the different difficulties, group the characteristics into 5 broad categories. Iaitu communication difficulties, social impediments, intense focus interest, sensitivities, and routine and repetition. And these are the hypotheses. So kalau kita tengokkan, dia bukannya selari. Kemungkinan contohnya dalam individu A, dia mungkin ada lebih dalam intense focus dalam interest, tetapi dia punya communication difficulties itu kurang. Okay, dalam individu B, dia lebih banyak communication difficulties, tapi dia tak ada intense focus atau interest. So you can see that they have different things, and certain things may be more obvious, certain things may be less. And also in a lot of times, if you listen to the autistic narratives, they will tell you that in certain situations, they may feel that they may be able, they may cope well with most of the time, but in certain situations where they are very anxious or stressed out, that cause them, there are more characteristics of autism may come out, So then that's why we always, I was also listening to a lot of other speakers on autism. They say that, when there are more autistic behaviors that are shown in a person who usually don't show these characteristics, it's also a sign of stress, a sign of overwhelming of the situation. Okay, so what word should we use? Should we use high functioning autism and low functioning autism? Or should we use mild, moderate and severe autism? Tapi saya rasa soalan yang patut kita tanya ialah, label semua ni adalah untuk siapa? For whom are these labels? They are mostly used by teachers, therapists, parents and others as a shorthand way to describe how severely a person on the spectrum is affected. It's according to Tom Allen, an autism advocate. So biasanya ini adalah digunakan oleh orang selain pada orang yang ada autism, for them to say that high functioning ke, low functioning ke, mild ke, severe or moderate. So it's a way for them to label people who have autism themselves, okay, rather than the people who are autistic than labeling themselves. So what are their perspective on this? Okay, Hannah Gadsby, if you have Netflix, I would recommend that you watch Douglas. She is a comedian, okay, and she has her own show. And this is what she said: I have what's called high functioning autism, which is a terrible name for what I have because it gives the impression that I function highly. I do not. So kemungkinan kita rasa dia function highly because they can talk well, they can express their thoughts, but deep inside they may not feel the same. Calling Tom Allen again, calling someone high functioning discounts and dismisses their needs and struggles. Plus, they may not see themselves as high functioning when inside they feel like they have failed with respect to their needs and struggles. Calling someone low functioning discounts and dismisses their strengths and capabilities and contributes to their depression and oppression. So-called Adam Wharton, another autism advocate, so-called mild autism doesn't mean one experiences autism mildly. It means you, that means the people, saya dan anda, yang tiada autisme, okay, experience their autism mildly. So we feel that they are mild because we experience it less. Maybe we feel they are severe because we experience it more. Okay, so we'll come back to this autism, autistic or autism spectrum disorder. Okay. In a survey done in UK in 2016, mereka survey kepada apakah preference kepada komuniti kat sana yang lebih gemar nak guna, autism ke atau autistic atau autism spectrum disorder. So the survey found that most professionals prefer person first, autism or autism spectrum disorder. It's because professionals, professionals are people who work with the autistic people. Okay, so we are schooled that way. We are schooled to use person first. We are schooled to say that the person has autism. We are schooled to use. That's why we are schooled to use person first. But they found that most individuals with autism and also their family members prefer identity first. Mereka lebih gemar untuk guna autistic. So they would identify themselves as autistic rather than with autism. And I read some also before in Australia. There was also a survey done, and Australia also about the same result. Okay, in Australia the preference is they will call themselves either autistic or on the spectrum. Okay, so Jim Sinclair is a prolific writer. He has autism. Okay, dia adalah autistic. Ini adalah apa yang dia cakap pasal person first or identity first. Person first language, person first iaitu with autism, is quite openly about dissociating the person from their autism. This fundamentally rests upon the assumption that our autism is something we should be ashamed of. It fundamentally rests upon a stigmatizing view of autism. Because autism is such a fundamental part of who we are, any view motivated by the idea that autism is a bad thing is effectively telling us that there is something wrong with us. That's the last thing we need to hear. I'm proud of my autism, and I know many others are as well. Thus, I have chosen to use identity first. So, Jim Sinclair, dia pilih untuk guna autistic sebab dia rasa itu adalah a part of their own identity, and autism bukanlah sesuatu yang that he should be ashamed of, bukan sesuatu yang dia patut malu atau sesuatu yang dia rasa is something bad. Okay, now so this is what I feel personally. For me, I feel that if they can tell you, we should ask them. Okay, kita patut tanya, kalaulah mereka boleh beritahu kita how they would like to be referred. Would you like to be referred as autism or as autistic? You know, so I don't particularly think that it's wrong to call person with autism atau autistic, but I feel that we should respect whatever view that they have and respect that they would prefer to be called in such a way. So adakah mereka berada dalam dunia mereka sendiri? Okay, so saya tahu sekarang kita ada pandemik COVID-19, kita tak dapat nak travel. So imbas kembalilah, kalaulah kita boleh melancong pergi ke mana-mana di seluruh dunia, okay, adakah kita akan mendapati ada perbezaan? Tentu ada perbezaan kan. So what are the differences that we will find and what, okay? So among some of the differences kemungkinan sangat obvious ialah language, bahasa yang kita gunakan, pakaian yang kita pakai, dan juga mungkin makanan. Okay, so this is what the autistic people say. The autistic people say that they have their own language and they have their own culture. So what is the autistic language and culture? So the question that begs us is that what language are we using when we are communicating with the autistic people? Adakah kita belajar bahasa mereka? Okay, for example, if they echolalia, what do they mean by the echolalia? Bukannya kita kata kalau dia echolalia, yes, kemungkinan ada setengah benda tu mereka tak faham, that's why they echolalia. Tetapi ada setengah some of them they echolalia for a purpose. So instead of just straight away say that, you know, oh, it's non-functioning, or ini tingkah laku tidak berfungsi, non-functioning behavior whatsoever. Who are we to say that? Should we try to find out first, is it really, it may seem non-functioning for us, but it may serve a purpose for the autistic people. What's the meaning behind their echolalia? Atau what's the meaning behind their idiosyncrasies? Bila mereka cakap sesuatu yang kemungkinan, kenapa dia sebut macam tu? Apakah maksudnya? Atau bila dia menunjukkan kelakuan tertentu yang kita rasa kurang memahami. Tapi adakah kita cuba untuk nak belajar kemungkinan itu adalah satu cara komunikasi mereka? Do we have a shared medium? Adakah kita menggunakan perkongsi medium yang sama? Atau adakah kita rasa kita patut guna medium yang kita tentukan sahaja? Iaitu kita perlu bertutur dengan cara tertentu sahaja. Okay, so do we have multiple channels for them to communicate? Okay, do we meet them halfway? Adakah kita meet them halfway, memberi laluan juga, you know, that is something that, you know, you come forward, I come forward, or do we expect them to come all the way to us without us needing to go some way forward as well? Okay, so Olga Bolashina said this: let us learn their language or languages. If they try to interpret our way of functioning, why can't we do the same? Since imagination is one of the areas in which people with autism have difficulty, it should be easier for us to imagine what it is like to experience the world in an autistic way than the other way around. Adalah lebih senang untuk kita cuba fikirkan macam mana perasaan atau macam mana kesukaran yang dialami oleh orang yang ada autism berbanding dengan mereka nak fikirkan sebaliknya. And what is very important, we could learn their communication systems and teach them translation skills in order to make communication easier for both us and them. So kita patut belajar sistem komunikasi mereka and then we translate. So this is one of the examples. Okay, so this child, is autistic. He is non-verbal, but he has so much to say. Okay, he use PECS, picture exchange communication system. Kalau gambar tu ada, okay. Tapi kalau gambar tu tak ada, dia akan cuba guna cara yang berlainan untuk nak bagi tahu kita sesuatu. For example, he may show playground scene in the YouTube. Dia akan cari YouTube video sampailah satu playground scene to request to go to playground. Atau dia mungkin akan buang gambar from the balcony. Okay, then you know it may seem like a challenging behavior. But if you ask her, when I ask the mother, why do you think she does that? It's because she doesn't want to do the activities. Then he also had arranged chairs in front of our smart board and point to the smart board. Kenapa? Sebab dia nak circle time. So all these were translated by the mother. So the mother could translate what was his intention and what was his needs and his wants, So then when we understand him, so we gave him another system which is more useful for him, which is using the PAX app on the tablet. Okay, where because pictures are too few for him and it's too slow for his thinking. Okay, so when we have this, we could immediately put pictures in and he could actually communicate much better. And for the first time, selepas dia gunakan sistem komunikasi tablet ini, he started calling people using his tablet. He will take the picture of, like, say, grandfather and call grandpa, mommy, grandma, and sebagainya. So that, family members are very happy, even though he's not calling them as in using his mouth to speak the words, but he's calling them in a way that they know that he recognizes them, he knows them. Okay, so baru-baru ni kan tahun baru Cina. So then let me show you this. This is what he wished. So when you give them a system, help them to translate what they mean, and then give them a system that they can use to help us understand them better, they actually have so much more that they can communicate, and banyak benda yang dia boleh bagi tahu kita dan banyak benda yang kita akan lebih senang memahami. Okay, apa pula budaya? Okay, budaya ialah pattern yang dikongsi, pattern dalam manusia yang dikongsi bersama. So budaya ni dia akan affect the way, okay, cara orang berfikir, cara orang makan, pakai baju, kerja, okay, spend leisure time, atau understand natural phenomena, and also dalam berkomunikasi. Okay, people in one cultural group might at times find those from another group difficult to understand or unusual. Okay, so kemungkinan kita akan rasa peliknya kenapa dia makan macam tu, atau peliknya kenapa dia pakai baju macam tu kalau kita dari budaya yang berasingan. Okay, so let me ask you, would you prefer to wear shoes or no shoes in the house? So kebanyakan masanya kita tak pakai kasut kat rumah. Ada setengah tu mungkin akan pakai slipper, tapi orang Asia biasanya kita tak akan pakai kasut kat dalam. Saya sendiri kurang selesa kalau pakai kasut. Kalau boleh saya tak nak pakai kasut. Okay, tapi in some countries they may feel like, kenapa tak pakai kasut, so dirty, you're walking around without shoes, so then these are some of the different culture that we experience. Meanwhile, in Thailand, shoes can function as helping us to line up. So for them, it's like, this is a smart way. I can still sit down and my shoes are lining up. I still know which one is my turn. Okay, and then this picture was taken in Genius Kunia. I was outside a class and I saw this. So somebody arranged their shoes. This is a classroom where our autistic children learn. And so somebody arranged it slightly, and semua orang ikan ikut and curve it around. I find it very interesting, So I think what usually we would do is to kick it, okay, and then susun, luruskan dan susun dalam sebaris. But for them, they understand that this can be also a way for them to susun, and it doesn't have to be following the so-called normal pattern that we expect. So Jim Sinclair again, he says, it takes more work to communicate with someone whose native language isn't the same as yours. And autism goes deeper than language and culture. Autistic people are foreigners in any society. Dia adalah orang asing dalam mana-mana masyarakat. You're going to have to give up your assumptions about share meanings. Okay? Jangan rasa kita sangat memahami mereka. You're going to have to learn to back up to levels more basic than you have probably thought about before, to translate and to check to make sure your translations are understood. You're going to have to give up the certainty that comes of being on your familiar territory, of knowing you're in charge, and let your child teach you a little of her language, guide you a little to his world. So daripada kita yang perlu mengajar mereka, kemungkinan kita sendiri yang perlu bagi peluang kepada anak kita atau individu autisme tu untuk nak take charge and mengajar kita. Okay? So Damien Milton is another, he's an autistic lecturer in University of Kent. This is what he said. So it is true that autistic people often lack insight about non-autistic perceptions. and culture. Yet it is equally the case that non-autistic people lack insight into the minds and culture of autistic people. So it's a two-way. Okay, kalau kita rasa mereka kurang memahami kita, kita sendiri pun mungkin tidak ambil effort untuk nak memahami mereka. So if we see this restricted, repetitive patterns behavior of patterns of behavior, interests, and activities. Okay, if you look at it, right, we find that this is something that is very autistic. This is something that I don't know why they do it. It's just being autistic. Okay, so do we ask why? So let me show you something. If you have Netflix, I will recommend that you watch this show, Love on the Spectrum. It follows different autistic individuals on their quest to find love. So this is Olivia. So this is what Olivia said. I jump around like a ping pong ball when I'm happy, excited, or anxious, or nervous. So untuk dia, when dia jump around, it actually helps her, okay, to contain or to release her emotions. Okay, so there is a function for them to do things. So this is Jimmy. Jimmy has a lot of Rubik cubes. He sometimes Rubik cubes, and if you watch the show, you'll see that his Rubik cubes collection is very nice, all in a row. Okay, so this is what he said. I originally got the Rubik's cube to keep my fingers and hands busy when I'm anxious, and I still like them. And you can see that he will still play with them, and you carry it around with him sometimes to help him. So before that, I also want to introduce you to Shani. Shani is his girlfriend. This is Jimmy. Shani also has autism. So this question was asked to them. What's the hardest thing about being on the spectrum? Apakah perkara yang paling susah bila kita ada autisme? So this is what Shani said. We get major anxiety. We get busy head, so sometimes like roller coaster. And Jimmy says this. I think it's annoying when other people don't see what I see. So this question was asked to them as well. Is change hard to deal with? Adakah susah untuk nak menerima perubahan? So this is what Jimmy said. Change is like a bad holiday. I like holidays, but I don't like changes much. I like planned change. So if you can plan change, it's very, very good. So then perubahan bukan sesuatu yang senang untuk mereka. Dan kalau kita boleh memahami dan kita boleh buat persediaan, it will actually really, really help them. So Donna Williams, the late Donna Williams, she passed away. She's a prolific writer and autism advocate. Dia sendiri ada autisme. This is what she said. People with autism are generally pushed and pulled in all directions by people who don't have autism, whose systems of functioning are reasonably integrated, and who therefore make sense of interaction, environment, sensory stimuli, emotions, body messages, and make mental connections and so on in the usual non-autistic way. So dia rasa orang yang ada autism selalu ditolak ke sana sini oleh orang yang tiada autism. Dan orang yang tiada autism ni, dia punya functioning semua tu, integration tu semua okay. Tetapi mungkin kurang memahami bahawa orang yang autism tu, dia punya integration tu berlainan. So the person with autism, in my view, may learn that the ways of people who don't have their condition do not work for them. So, kita berfungsi dengan cara yang berbeza. So, I feel that it's not about the impairments, the anomalies or the deficits, about the autism itself, And I agree with what Olga Bodashina said. If they see our sincere desire to understand them, they do cooperate and try to express themselves more clearly. Just like the child that we saw who used the tablet, he was having a lot of different ways, showing a lot of what you can call challenging behaviors. It's because he wasn't understood. Or maybe he wasn't believed, he wasn't understood, not sure what to do. So, but then the mother could understand him, and when the mother translated to us and we respond to it, you can see that the child himself has so much joy, and then he tried his best to communicate back to us in a way that we can understand. So it's a two-way thing. We first need to understand them. Kita perlu memahami mereka, dan barulah kita boleh mengajar mereka untuk nak memahami kita juga. Hannah Gatsby, she has her show Douglas on Netflix. This is what she said. Honestly, the day I was formally diagnosed with autism was a very good day, because it felt like I've been handed the keys to the city of me, because I was able to make sense of so many things that had ever been confusing to me. Like why I could be so intelligent but struggle to leave any proof. Why can't I fill in forms? Why I felt such a profound sense of isolation my entire life, despite so hard to be part of a team. And that is the big thing about being on the spectrum. It is lonely. I find it very difficult to connect with others because my brain takes me to places where nobody else lives. So it is a constant struggle when they couldn't understand what is going on around them, and we don't make it easier. We try our best. It is a very lonely journey for them. Okay, and this is John Adams. John Adams is somebody that I have the honor of working with. He's autistic. He's an autistic artist, and I first met him bila saya attend a Scottish Autism Conference in 2018, and he gave a speech that was so inspiring. And this is what he said about autism: "I am not the word, or the letters, and the spaces in between, or the person in your imagination you think I should have been. I am human." Okay, and these are my references. Okay. And sempena Bulan Kesedaran Autisme pada bulan April nanti, we are organizing this event called My Community for Autism, where it serves as a platform adalah platform untuk komuniti autisme dan juga keluarga mereka untuk menyuarakan perspektif mereka dan juga sokongan yang mereka perlukan. So do check it out and support us to find out more about how we can build an inclusive community together. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Ennie.
Welcome.
All right. Okay, so Ennie, we have a few questions here.
Yep.
Okay, all right. So the first question is, ada yang tanya, kalau mild ASD tu level berapa?
Okay. Kalau mild ASD supposedly is called level 1. Tapi sebab sekarang orang tak nak panggil mild autism, so dia panggil lebih banyak kepada sokongan, tahap sokongan yang diperlukan. Tahap sokongan tahap 1 iaitu kurang sikit sokongan yang diperlukan untuk dia melakukan aktiviti harian. Whereas kalau tahap sokongan 2 atau tahap sokongan 3, that means dia memerlukan lebih banyak sokongan untuk aktiviti harian dia.
Okay, so macam kita akan lebih fokuskan terhadap berapa banyak sokongan yang diperlukan, betul tak?
Ya,
Okay.
betul.
Alright, okay, and then the next question is, apa perbezaan autism spectrum disorder dengan neurodiverse?
Okay. Autism spectrum disorder is a diagnosis. Dia adalah yang nampakkan kecelaruan. Whereas neurodiversity is a movement, okay, that is started. So neurodiversity movement talks about that kita adalah mempunyai otak yang berbeza. So neuro as in otak, and then diverse berbeza. So neurodiversity is a movement itself that say that there's nothing wrong. It's just that the way that we operate are different. So autistic brain operates differently. Kita punya non-autistic brain operate differently. So there's a neurodiversity. Okay. So whereas ASD, autism spectrum disorder, is a label and a diagnosis that's given to somebody. Okay.
Okay. Right. The next question is, okay, adakah speech delay ada kaitan dengan autism?
Okay. One of the early signs of autism ialah speech delay. Tetapi kebanyakan masanya speech delay itu adalah disebabkan oleh ketidakfahaman atau kekurangfahaman penggunaan pertuturan untuk berkomunikasi. So they may have speech delay first, but usually once they understand, if they adakan intervensi awal dan sebagainya, boleh membantu mereka untuk nak mengurangkan. But some of them may continue to have some sort of speech delay, tapi lebih banyak berkaitan dengan kefahaman mereka terhadap komunikasi. Do they understand what are the different words to use untuk komunikasi yang berlainan? Contohnya, kalaulah kemahiran komunikasi mereka terhad kepada meminta, so they may learn only words yang berkaitan dengan apa yang mereka perlukan sahaja. They may not learn other words that they don't need. Okay, so then it's about like how we can help them to learn about how to communicate with us. Just like the child that we saw in the video, okay, dia sebelum ni dia cuba communicate things that they need. that he needs. Tapi bila dia dah ada, so because he wants interaction, so he learns to call people. So he learns to how to call grandpa, how to call grandma, although in his own ways, and then how to give greeting. This is not something that he wants, but this is something that he wants to express, or he wish to connect with people, so that the words can expand if we help them to expand their communication function.
Okay, yes. Okay, and I think this is the last question. Okay, so this one kita dah bincang lah tadi, which is autistic dengan autism ni sama ke? Which is
Sama.
Sama.
Autistic dan autisme adalah sama, hanya kita nak pakai autistic tu identity first. Identity dia adalah identity diri, okay? Language, bahasa yang berunsurkan identity diri, atau autisme bahasa yang berunsurkan orang tu dulu. So sama ada kita cakap orang dengan autisme, orang yang mengalami autisme, orang yang mempunyai autisme dan sebagainya, atau individu autistik. Tapi of course dalam bahasa Melayu dan bahasa Inggeris, dia kemungkinan dia punya syntax tu berlainan grammar. So in English will be autistic people, tapi will be people with autism. Okay?
Okay, ini kita ada question more. Okay, alright. And then, okay, adakah autism mempunyai kosakata yang terhad dalam komunikasi?
Kalau dia ada kosakata terhad, is mostly in the beginning, masa dia kecil. Kemungkinan dia akan ada motivasi untuk nak belajar benda yang dia nak, untuk nak komunikasi. But if you help them to expand their communication, dia boleh jadi, boleh berkomunikasi seperti mana orang lain juga. Not all of them, because it depends on whether or not they have additional diagnosis seperti intellectual disability. Kalau katakan dia ada intellectual disability juga, then kemungkinan masalah pembelajaran tu akan menghadkan keupayaan dia untuk nak belajar banyak perkataan atau ingat banyak perkataan. Tetapi kalaulah dia hanya ada diagnosis autism sahaja, eventually they will be able to learn just like you and me to communicate in using berbagai perkataan dengan berbagai cara.
Okay, alright, thank you. Okay, the next question is, adakah individu dengan autism akan terdedah dengan mental issues yang lain?
Yeah, so when there are a lot of research that's being done that shows that individu yang ada autisme tu, they have very prone to stress and also have anxiety. Dia senang untuk. Also, I feel that it's because of the environment. If you don't understand the environment that you are in, you're constantly in a highly stressful environment, you will also be stressed and also have anxious. Especially when, kalau katakan kita perlu berfungsi dengan tahap tertentu mengikut kenormalan yang ditetapkan oleh orang lain yang mungkin tidak memahami autism. Okay. Now, having said that, so if this persists on, a lot of times, especially in teenage onwards, semasa remaja ke atas, a lot of them can have an additional diagnosis. So there are a lot of researchers that show that a lot of them also start to have anxiety diagnosis, mental health diagnosis, seperti anxiety, depression, and so on. So it's more complicated bila mereka dah transition to adulthood sebab mungkin ada additional mental health issues. Okay, so adakah mereka akan ada semestinya? Tidak semestinya semua, tetapi berkecenderungan tinggi untuk lebih banyak, it's like more likely to have mental health issues as compared to people who are non-autistic. Okay, soalan.
Alright, okay, sekejap ya. The next question is, okay. Adakah mereka yang berada pada level 3 boleh turun ke level 2 ataupun level 1 selepas menerima intervensi ataupun supporting yang sepatutnya?
Okay.
Yes.
Well, it's very hard to see, when you're a child, especially 2-3 years old, or 3-4 years old, macam tu kan, sangat susah untuk nampak sama ada, dia autisme dia ni tahap keberapa. Obviously, when you're young, you really need a lot more support, and as they learn more, you may find that certain things they may need less support. Tetapi kemungkinan ada area lain yang mereka mungkin memerlukan lebih banyak support. So it's very I think that it's very hard to see autism as a linear. Contohnya dari tahap 3 dia turun kepada tahap 2, turun kepada tahap 1 dan sebagainya. Atau dia akan berada kat tahap 1 sepanjang masa sahaja. It depends on the different times of their life, apakah support yang mereka perlukan. Contohnya, mungkin masa kecil mereka lebih banyak memerlukan support, sokongan untuk komunikasi sebab tak tahu macam mana berkomunikasi. Tapi bila mereka dah tahu komunikasi, bila mereka perlu pergi ke sekolah, kemungkinan dia lebihkan sokongan untuk nak cope with sekolah. Kalau dia pergi ke universiti, kemungkinan untuk nak cope with the perubahan jadual. Sebab kalau contohnya sekolah, kita ada jadual, jangan kira sekarang pandemik lah, kalau kita ada jadual tertentu, you memang akan pergi ke sekolah 7.30 hingga pukul 1. Masa tu tak ditetapkan. But a lot of them can have this difficulty bila mereka transition to a tertiary education, pergi college ke atau pergi ke university. Sebab jadual tu dah berlainan, dia kena plan dan organize masa tu sendiri, then that's when they may have a difficulty. So mungkin dia akan memerlukan dia punya sokongan. So even if they do well in their studies, in secondary school dan sebagainya, doesn't mean that in tertiary education they totally will have no problem at all, because they may have different difficulties when it comes to changes. They also have difficulties in executive functioning, di mana planning and organizing things. So this is where they will need maybe support in helping them to learn how to organize and plan their things, especially tanpa ibu bapa keluarga bersama bila masuk ke college. So I will say that at different times of life, dia akan memerlukan sokongan yang berlainan. Adakah kita nak cakap masa tu dia akan perlukan sokongan tahap 3 ke tahap 2 ke? Itu saya nak cakap. Tapi kita kenal, apa yang pentingnya lah kita kenal pasti apakah sokongan yang dia perlukan pada masa itu.
Okay, good point ini. Alright. Okay, and then next question is, apa perbezaan Asperger syndrome dengan ASD?
Dulu kita ada Asperger syndrome, tapi selepas ada DSM-5, Asperger syndrome tu dah diserap masuk ke dalam the broad diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. So kita dah tak ada. So kalau kita tengokkan Asperger dulu, ialah dia tidak ada Asperger, dia tidak mempunyai delay in language. By 2 years old, they will have language ready. Tapi dia mungkin ada lebih banyak kesukaran dalam repetitive behavior, dari segi restricted interest dan sebagainya, iaitu lebih banyak. But because they did studies and find that Asperger dan autism spectrum disorder tu, dia macam tak banyak berbeza. So in DSM-5, they put everything into one big umbrella, sebab dulu dia ada pervasive developmental disorder and so on. So then right now they put everything under one big umbrella of autism spectrum disorder. So sekarang dah tak ada orang bagi diagnosis Asperger. Kalau sebelum tahun 2013 kemungkinan ada diagnosis tu, lepas tu tak ada orang bagi diagnosis tu.
Alright, Okay, next question. Can autism be treated if the patient was detected early by the doctors? Boleh dirawat tak? Boleh. Yes.
So it depends on what is your definition of treatment. Treatment as in cure, as in makan ubat dan jadi baik, then no. Can autism be supported to help them in daily function? Then yes. Early intervention can help the person to maximize their potential. Dari segi, contohnya, kalaulah dari kecil dia tidak dikenal pasti sebagai autism, tapi dia ada masalah komunikasi dan dia tidak diberi sokongan sepatutnya, sampai besar pun masalah itu akan menjadi lebih susah. Tetapi kalau kemarahan komunikasi dia diberi sokongan dari kecil, dia belajar bagaimana komunikasi, dia boleh belajar as he go along the way how to communicate in different variety of ways, then dia akan dapat menguruskan banyak aktiviti harian dia. So it can help in the sense that, tapi adakah autisme itu akan hilang? No, dia tidak akan hilang. It's part of the person. Dia bukannya sejenis penyakit. Alright?
Okay, alright. Next question. Banyak question ni.
Tiba-tiba ya.
kita after this kita akan lagi 2 soalan, Alright, so next question is, ketika umur berapa kanak-kanak boleh dilihat sebagai autism? Adakah kanak-kanak autism akan menjadi lebih teruk jika tidak mendapat terapi yang sepatutnya?
Okay, usually kalaulah anda mengikuti klinik kesihatan untuk vaccination dan sebagainya, you will notice that pada umur 18 bulan, okay, kita akan buat saringan autisme dalam MCHEK. It's in all klinik kesihatan. Saya tak pasti pasal klinik private, sorry ya. Yang itu kemungkinan kena tanya doktor untuk nak kena pastilah. So as early as 18 months old, you can already see signs. Okay, so kalaulah dia ada ciri-ciri yang dia tunjukkan, dia akan dirujuk kepada doktor pakar kanak-kanak untuk membuat penilaian seterusnya untuk kena pasti sama ada autism ke tidak. So then as young as some of them even younger than 18 months old boleh nampak. Okay, soalan yang seterusnya apa? Okay, adakah kanak-kanak? Okay, menjadi lebih teruk. Okay, kalau dia menjadi lebih teruk is also because of the frustration and everything. You know, dari segi I have to go back to this. Kalaulah dia tidak difahami, because communication is one of the main thing about autism, kesukaran dalam komunikasi. Kalaulah kita tak membantu dia untuk nak develop communication dan sebagainya, okay, dia susah untuk nak express diri, sering tidak difahami, okay, then dia akan apa yang dia cuba express orang tak faham tu, dia akan jadi the frust can translate into a behavior or challenging behavior later. So dari segi kalau kita rasa adakah itu menjadi teruk, is more towards of an effect of the kurang intervensi atau sokongan yang diperlukan pada masa kecil yang escalate maybe a bit more later on. But of course we don't discount that there are some children yang ada sensory issues dan sebagainya. So it require a multiple effort from the interventionist, orang yang membantu, doktor dan sebagainya, dan juga community at large who understands. That's why we are trying to strive community to understand them, that they have a different way of operating or processing things and that we need to be very mindful. So then sokongan tu kena sepadu, then only we can help them. So kalaulah dia dapatkan terapi yang sepatutnya, bukan sahaja baik untuk kanak-kanak tu tetapi juga untuk penjaga dia, ibu bapa dan sebagainya untuk memahami kenapa dia perlukan sokongan tertentu. Okay.
Alright, okay. Next question is, jika anak baru umur 4 tahun and then doktor kata ada simptom autism tetapi mild dan perlu lagi pemantauan. Jadi adakah peluang untuk sign autism tu akan hilang bila umur dia dah mencecah like 6 to 7 years old? Sebab doktor kata tak sure within like 50-50 macam tu.
Okay, now sebab dia bukannya confirm diagnosis, so susah kita nak cakap. Tapi kalau katakan betul-betul kanak-kanak tu ada ciri-ciri autism dan ada autism, if it's so-called mild early stage on, it might be even more apparent as they go on, membesar nanti, because the gap in the communication. Kemungkinan dia boleh belajar, let's say for example a child yang kita panggil nak cakap lah mild autism sebab dia kurang ciri yang kita nampak. Okay, kemungkinan sebab dia boleh meminta, dia boleh bercakap dan sebagainya, you know. Tapi kalaulah dia kalau kita tengokkan, kemungkinan dia juga akan nampak certain things yang mungkin ada gap dari segi communication dengan rakan sebaya dia. Dia mungkin tak dapat nak bermain dengan rakan sebaya dia walaupun dia boleh bertutur. Okay? Mungkin dia kurang dapat berinteraksi dengan orang lain. Dia hanya boleh berinteraksi dia. So that as you grow older, these things may appear more significant sebab dia perlu keluar ke community yang lebih besar. So they may have more difficulties when they go to school as compared to kat rumah. Where the symptoms are less sebab dia dah biasa, dia dah tahu apa nak buat kat rumah. But in a school, they may not know what to do. Or maybe they have certain repetitive or certain interests, you know, yang di mana it's okay when you're at home, but once you're out there, people may not understand. So that the characteristics may become more obvious. So that kalaulah dia betul-betul ada, dia tak akan hilang macam tu. Tetapi so that's why there are certain people who only get their diagnosis when they are older. Like dalam sekarang lebih ramai orang dewasa yang dapat diagnosis. Okay? They are not diagnosed when they are young because they are not recognized. They are so-called mild, tak obvious. Tapi bila besar actually nampak, then they find that, why am I, like you know how Hannah Gatsby said she was diagnosed when she was adult. She said that why do I feel like I'm so lonely, I cannot connect with people. The whole thing is still there. They may not be able to tell you. You may not be able to feel it only, but it doesn't go away.
Okay. Okay, so this is the last question. Okay, alright. So, okay, is it true that more people are on the spectrum nowadays? Maksudnya sekarang kita nampak ada ramai yang diagnosed as autism. So, adakah disebabkan like kita macam over like diagnose ataupun macam mana? Apa pendapat Annie?
Okay, so number one is that definitely there are more awareness. One is that there are more awareness, more people like have heard of autism. Tapi kadang-kadang kan semua pun dikatakan autism. Anak saya speech delay autism ke? Kemungkinan bukan sebab autism lah. Okay. Now, but definitely the awareness is more. So more people are bringing their child for diagnosis or for evaluation. Keduanya ialah lebih banyak training dah diperlukan, so people know how to diagnose better as well as compared to last time. And also the third thing is that there are also studies that show that, you know, once this autism spectrum disorder big umbrella dah semua masukkan ke dalam the DSM-5 tu, there are more people being diagnosed as well because the criteria becomes more broad dan sebagainya. It depends on how you see it. So whether or not they are diagnosed ke tak diagnosed ke, I think very important is that if people need sokongan, then they need the sokongan. Unfortunately sekarang kalaulah kita ada diagnosis tu, you are intervention is more accessible to you as compared to kalau tak ada diagnosis. So it's something that you need to say. I have people who didn't go through the diagnosis, not to say didn't go through the diagnosis, they were diagnosed, but because they were thought to do well, okay, no problem. But then they start to have difficulties once they are in adulthood. Susah nak dapat kerja, susah nak sustain kerja, susah nak cope with studies, drop out of college, drop out of whatever, because because they didn't get the sokongan atau the support that they need, you know. So then whether it's late ke early ke sebagainya, we need to recognize that they will need some sort of support along the way. Okay?
Okay. Alright, so I think that's all. Annie?
Very much.
Okay, so thank you Annie for the interesting sharing for today. So maybe all of us after this like rethink about autism. Okay? Okay, so alright. Okay, jadi untuk tuan-puan semua, okay, ada pemberitahuan bahawa kita tak boleh ada kesukaran teknikal, kita tak boleh nak letak link dekat ruang komen. Jadi semua boleh tengok di bawah skrin ni ada crawler tu kan. Okay, boleh type dekat phone atau komputer masing-masing lah. Kita ada sediakan link dekat crawler kat bawah ni. Alright. Okay, dan lepas ni kami akan letak dekat ruang komen kalau boleh selepas habis live ni, dan kita akan buka dalam masa 30 minit lah selepas kita letak link tu. Okay. Alright, so that's all for today. Okay, thank you. Terima kasih semua. Terima kasih semua join kita pada pagi ini. Okay, bye.